Well, I think first of all is making sure that all client files are meeting compliance standards, and as the FCA dictate. Certainly, if the firm has a compliance officer or uses the services of an external compliance provider, then hopefully we should see that those files are more likely to be up to date with the required compliant needs. I think what does a compliant file? Well, all IFAs I'm sure would know this, but basically we would be looking to make sure that there is a full fact find, that there is verification of the client's attitude to risk, and that was taken periodically. Also, of course, it would need to make sure that the suitability letter is in the file that's appropriate to the advice, and of course all the other money laundering checks, etc., to make sure that clients have been identified properly, etc. So a good compliant file will look exactly like that. I mean, even better if files are stored electronically, because if you think about an acquirer that is looking to buy your business, it's much easier if those files can be just transferred electronically rather than filing cabinets full of old paper files. However, don't worry, because there are still acquirers out there that will ensure that they can take on those files as well. When we look at the advice, it's really important to look at the types of advice that's given. So those more sort of complex areas will need further scrutiny. What I mean by that is probably like EIS schemes, VCTs, etc. And the hot potato, as everybody knows now, is DB pension transfers. So those files should make sure that they are as up to date as possible, and that all the records that justify the rationale behind the advice is held in those files. It is really important that it can be documented that the advice was given to clients, that by giving up those safeguarded benefits in favour of flexible benefits was suitable and appropriate for those clients. So getting the filing is really up to date, and if you have it on electronic system, then of course the great thing is that you should hopefully be able to have a client list with a lot of the information about the types of investment that those clients have actually received as well. So that's what really makes a perfect compliant files. Well, the FCA will need to be notified, of course, of any cancellation of authorisation, and it will depend whether the firm is directly authorised, whether it's an appointed representative or registered individual, in respect of who does that notification. But let's assume we're directly authorised, then of course the FCA will need to know of this. And for many directly authorised businesses, we are seeing more and more share sales, and of course that will require a change in control, which is a section 178 that needs to be submitted to the FCA. So that's one of the areas that the seller will need to consider, and it's not just the seller that needs to look at that as on the change in control, it will be the acquirer too. Now these sort of change in control, if we look at previous years, right the way through to end of 2022, we were seeing that these pretty much took around 3 months before authorisation was given to that change. But in 2023 we have seen massive improvement. We were quite excited at the beginning of the year to see it down to about 8 weeks, and we're now seeing it down to as low as 4 to 5 weeks, so that's really exciting. Just so that everybody is aware, the time span by the FCA is that it can take up to 60 working days from the submission of the application, and that's from when the FCA receive it. Of course, they can extend for up to 30 working days if they require additional information to clarify the application. In terms of the Section 178, a lot more emphasis is on what the acquirer needs to complete, and the sort of things that an acquirer will need to complete will be the organisation charts for the business, particularly if it's using a top co as well as a trading entity. It will need to look at whether there are any current or potential conflicts of interest. It will also need to look at the evidence of any funding for the acquisition, and it will also need to look at whether there's any existing or potential compliance issues, and that may be, of course, around consumer duty. And if there are issues, then it will need to make sure that it's covered how it's going to remedy those issues. Well, normally we would not expect staff to be told until the negotiations have progressed to a point where perhaps heads of terms have been agreed, and some may wait until contracts have been exchanged. At that point, especially if contracts have been exchanged, the sale is going to go ahead, so it would be the more appropriate time to advise staff. The reason for delaying is that potentially staff find out too early and nothing is actually agreed, there's not a lot to tell, and it may just spook some of the employees and they may go off and try to find employment elsewhere. But this is something that obviously staff will need to be told, and for most vendors that come to us, they really want to do right by their staff, and often a lot of conversations have taken place in the negotiations to make sure that they will be well looked after. So in terms of we need to look at whether TUPE applies, and TUPE is basically that undertaking to staff that their contracts will continue. Now, if somebody is buying a business and they're buying the shares and that business is going to continue, then without doubt TUPE would apply if they're going to integrate that into their existing business. However, if this is going to stand-alone business, then no employer has actually changed. It is the same, it's just the ownership has changed, so TUPE would not apply in that situation. Of course, we do a lot of asset sales where just the clients are sold. Now, if the clients are just sold on their own, then TUPE would not normally apply. Unless, of course, that the acquirer is going to take on some or all of the staff, and then it's likely to apply. Now, this is a complex area, and we would always recommend that expert help is obtained, either through your lawyer or through HR firm. So, what are the effects of TUPE? Basically, staff can be assured that their contract terms will be preserved. They'll either have the same or better terms. What does it mean for an acquirer? Then they need to remember that under TUPE, they are going to be liable not just for those contracts from the date of sale, but also for past actions as well. So it's really important for them to have done their due diligence to make sure that they're not going to have discrimination claims, etc., because they could be potentially liable. And as I mentioned, even if having an asset sale does not automatically mean that TUPE would not apply. So by law, it is important that you consult and inform staff about the impending changes. And if you have a sizable business, then you would normally appoint staff representatives, or indeed, if there is a union involved, then you would normally involve the union. Staff representatives must do as they say, represent the rest of the staff and be involved in that consultation process. It's basically to make sure that they are aware of what is happening and what will happen after the sale takes place. Well, I think communication is the main area here, making sure clients are communicated with and done in a timely manner. I think it's dangerous if some clients hear on the grapevine that a business is being sold, so it's important to keep the information a closely guarded secret, I would say, until you're ready to share that with all of your clients. Because if some find out that others know and they didn't, that doesn't really go down well. How we recommend that the process is done to to good standard and make sure that you have good retention of clients is firstly that the vendor writes a letter to all its clients explaining the reasons why they are selling, typically because of retirement, why they have chosen the acquirer that they have, and how that aligns very much with the type of service that they've already received. Of course, it never hurts to put in additional benefits, and that can happen because economies of scale that other firms are able to offer an enhanced service, and that never goes down badly at all because clients really want to know that they're not going to be worse off. So it's all about no surprise culture and making them understand what happens the day that the business gets sold, knowing that the vendor is perhaps around for a while so that they're on hand and aren't just walking out the door is another good positive point to put into the letters. Now, these letters are typically planned in advance before they're ready to be sent out, and usually the acquirer will have actually completed their letter that will go out almost immediately after the vendor's letter, that again uses a similar type of language in terms of what the vendor has said is going to happen to make sure that everything feels very joined up. And in that letter, it's really important for the client to know, well, when are they going to meet their new advisor? So again, giving information around that next expectation. We normally recommend that the first 3 months after a sale is really down to having those sort of double-headed meetings between the outgoing vendor advisor and the incoming. And if that is done well, then normally acquisitions go extremely well. Now, of course, since COVID, a lot more clients have been used to video conferencing, so not all clients have to be seen face to face, but of course for your larger clients we would always still recommend that extra mile is given, because you don't really want to lose any clients, because of course that can affect the deal if you do so. So really it is very much to have clear, concise communication and make sure there's a timetable that the clients are aware of and follow it. Of course, you do not have to do full reviews at that first meeting. It is just simply about doing literally a meet and greet, and normally the fact find can continue to be done on the normal servicing date. Yeah, sure. Well, for a share sale, basically the vendor is selling shares in a limited company, and majority of financial services business will have limited liability because it's given great protection to make sure that the business stands alone, separate from the owner's personal wealth. So that's a great opportunity to sell those shares, because under HMRC the share sale will attract business asset disposal relief subject to meeting the criteria and conditions. And that of course is only 10% tax on the first £1 million per individual of a business sale. So from vendor's point of view, that's going to be their most appealing way to sell the business. If, however, you're a sole trader or a partnership or indeed a limited liability partnership, then even selling your business as an asset sale, so just selling the client relationships, will still attract business asset disposal relief. So that can be very welcome, particularly from acquirers. More acquirers are happy to consider share purchases than they were. The downside to an acquirer acquiring shares is the liability really from incorporation. So that will include past risk, It will include all types of contracts that the company has gone into, whether that is employment contracts, it may be contractors, etc. So it is really important that extra due diligence is carried out. However, acquirers have realised that companies can be acquired in that way with relevant due diligence, and also helped by having the appropriate indemnities and warranties in contracts. So it's really important for acquirers to actually carry out those due diligence, and then if happy, and of course many businesses that we see are vanilla, I would say, in terms of risk, and they are normally the ones that would be welcomed. For larger firms, of course, it's going to have to be virtually a share sale, or else the corporation tax element can be vast. It's always useful to talk to an expert, so involve an accountant to see other ways perhaps, if you can't do a share sale, how you can extract the funds in the most tax efficient way possible. Yeah, so we see three core propositions here, which is sell and go, sell, transition and go, or sell and stay. Sell and go, fairly in the basic sense, very rarely happens. Which is basically that you notify your clients that they've been taken over and just allow the acquirer to approach them, etc. Most vendors would prefer to be involved with their clients, to thank them for all their past custom and to explain why they are selling and who they have chosen, etc. And being involved and being part of the process and doing the handover meetings, so the double-headed meeting with the new advisor would normally be referred to as a sell, transition and go. And that, I would say, is around 80% of our sale arrangements that we have. To sell and stay, it's just simply that the vendor no longer wants to continue to run a business, happy to create a capital event and monetize the business as is, but would like to stay on post-sale, and either as an ambassador or as an advisor. And then therefore those contracts are normally created so that the advisor can do exactly that.